You get a hangnail that's infected and go into your doctor's office, they're going to weigh you, right? So we have learned that the scale is an important data point. And I'm trying to help women see that it's not. If you're weighing yourself every day, quite frankly, you're getting different levels of stool burden in your colon, right? So some days you may have more poop in there, even though you've already pooped. Welcome to Faded to Fabulous, the podcast for women who know that midlife is not the end. It's the beginning of something bold. Let's get into it.
So Kim and ladies, welcome. We are going to jump in with the topic we probably get asked the most about.
Yeah.
The freaking scale.
I know, right?
It's
Scale's a meanie,
yeah,
Vicki.
it's a meanie. And Kim, let's jump right in. What are your top recommendations? So we both know who's coming to see you. It's the ladies who are like, I have done everything I've always done and more, and I am so in the struggle. What are you telling these women? What are the top tidbits of advice?
Okay. First, honestly, what I do is I just listen. I listen to their story, and sometimes just being able to get it out of their head helps. And then my whole thing is, let's look at what you're doing and let's work on something that may be more beneficial. So in general, I look at protein.
Yeah.
Because I know that the bulk of women in this country are not consuming, and probably other industrialized countries, are not consuming enough protein. Right? So I start there and I look at what are their sources of protein. Are they just eating plant? Are they a plant-based eater? Then, we look at different kinds of things. If they're eating both animal and plant, then I look at what are the things they're currently doing. Is it that they're not eating enough of those things? Or do they need to add more protein? Mm-hmm. So I know you've heard me say this before, but front load the morning.
Yeah, that
right?
I think is one of the best pieces of advice.
So if you front load your morning by having at least 30 grams of protein at breakfast and 10 grams of fiber, you can make the whole day feel so much better. And then it's it sets the precedent for the rest of the day. So that is always my first place to start. And I really feel like the way you eat should be something that you like. So if you don't like eggs, then I'm not going to suggest that you eat eggs for breakfast, right?
Cottage cheese is so controversial.
I know, right? But to be honest, I do a hard sell for cottage cheese. I really do.
Too. I actually like it.
I make a hard sell. Yeah. Here's the God's honest truth, Vicki. I don't like it by the spoonful. Okay. I really don't. But I eat it almost every single day. I create a bowl of
you've
cottage
got good
cheese.
stuff in there.
I put stuff in there.
Yeah.
I'm not putting a spoonful of cottage cheese in my mouth. It's just not my jam, right? But if it's got raspberries and seeds and nuts and maybe some of my raspberry chia jam, maybe some stewed rhubarb, if I have something in the bite, it's okay. And why cottage cheese? Because it literally is rock star food for women. Yeah. It is an excellent source of protein. It's actually even better per gram than Greek yogurt is, right? So in 1 cup of cottage cheese is approximately 30 grams, 28 to 30 grams of protein.
So you're saying front load breakfast.
Yes.
You focus on protein.
Yes.
What are your other, if you have a woman, you only can see her for an hour, you're never going to see her again. What are the things you're saying so that she is as successful as she can be?
Okay. I start to reframe the meaning of the scale, right? We are caught in a culture of the scale having way too much importance. Mm-hmm. You get a hangnail that's infected and go into your doctor's office, they're going to weigh you, right? So we have learned that the scale is an important data point. And I'm trying to help women see that it's not. If you're weighing yourself every day, quite frankly, you're getting different levels of stool burden in your colon, right? So some days you may have more poop in there, even though you've already pooped. Mm-hmm. And so you stand on the scale and you're 2 pounds up.
Absolutely.
You're freaking out thinking that
you're taking off your earrings.
Right. Yeah. So
see if you weigh less.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I never think anybody should ever get on the scale. That's not what I'm thinking. But it's not the only tool of mesuring your value.
Right. Changing the relationship to the scale is a huge part. But in terms of so again, you're only seeing this woman for an hour.
Right. Oh, okay.
You have to give her protein,
Yep.
fiber.
Broadening the intake of fruits and vegetables
Yep.
because of a few things. Number one, they do add more fiber, which makes you feel more full longer.
And helps with the insulin resistance piece in a lot of women.
Yep,
Yeah,
correct.
Which they get
Yep.
in menopause.
And on that note, right? So the next thing that I look at, and you know my funny expression, right? No naked carbohydrates.
That's my favorite, Kim Lovely.
Yeah.
People will come back to see me after they've seen her and they're like, I didn't realize I shouldn't have naked carbs. So that's what Kim tells everybody. Like, you've got to pair it with a friend.
Yeah.
And it sticks in their brains.
It does.
And those small changes make a big difference, not just in the scale, in how they feel,
Yes.
in their energy.
Yes.
Front loading the day is huge. So many women are stuck in like, I have to fast for 27 hours. And then there's that, or eat a really quote unquote good breakfast, which again, we try to get away from good and bad, no morality tied to food. But if they're like white knuckling it all day with their tiny little breakfast and their protein shake for lunch, then they come home and eat the house like that, right?
Because they're overly hungry,
Right.
and then we make terrible decisions for ourselves. You know, it's really funny. Sometimes when women share with me what they're eating, I'm shocked at the amount of women who undereat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are the things you see most commonly that aren't effective or the biggest mistakes women are making in their efforts to change the scale?
So the first one is undereating. Like
Absolutely.
literally not eating enough.
That's diet culture.
It
Our
is.
generation is like...
It is.
Yeah.
And you know what? Even all the apps, like if you use MyFitnessPal or Noom or any of those apps, they always come in lower than the calculation for the person's basic needs,
Yeah.
right? So we know that any less than 1,500 calories, unless you're 4'6", which is very few women, anything less than that is undereating. You are not going to get the nutrition that you need to be well. And that's all the things, not just protein, but all the things. You're going to use your lean body mass as a source of energy.
And
which is horrid.
They're doing that calorie restriction while they're going to, hit classes
Exactly.
twice a day. Girl,
It's really
your
bad.
body thinks you're heading into a cave for the winter. Like, it's going to
Correct.
slow down everything.
Yep. I always say, so if your baseline metabolic rate is here and you're eating here, what your body hears is, oh, my human doesn't have the ability to find that amount of food.
Right.
So we better lower our expectations. And we want to literally live our lives eating as much as we possibly can to, essentially weigh what we want to weigh, right? We never want to shoot under it. I always joke, right? If you're doing it right, it means that when you go on vacation and you have a few extras and you put on 4 pounds or whatever, fabulous. Because that means that the rest of your life, you're actually riding the rail of getting exactly what you need. We want that to happen. So other pieces of advice, the naked carb. Let's just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
What that means is that you don't consume carbohydrates all by themselves. And that includes fruit, right?
Yeah.
Carbohydrates alone cause the blood sugar to rise. It's called a glucose spike. When we have glucose spikes, the body has to send out additional insulin to lower that glucose spike back down to what it considers normal. And normal is based on 4 grams of sugar in your entire body, head to toe. That's a teaspoon. So anytime we consume more than 4 grams, our body says, oh, danger, we need to lower our sugar. So we need to bring up more insulin. Insulin is an anabolic hormone. It makes us hungry and heavy.
Yeah, and this is in my practice, so I'm ordering the labs. And so these women who are like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all the right things, and I'm up 20 pounds, and then we check their labs.
Yeah.
Insulin is high, glucose is in pre-diabetic range, cholesterol is going up. So definitely great points about minimizing that impact by pairing your protein, pairing your carbs with a protein.
When you have a carbohydrate, like let's say you want to have a banana, right? You got a hankering for a banana. Pair it with some peanut butter,
Right.
or a piece of cheese,
Right.
or put some Greek yogurt on it, plain preferably. Or, if you're like me and you can't think it through, eat a handful of nuts. If you pair the carbohydrate with a protein or fat, You slow down the digestion of that carb, which slows down the peak. So you get this nice little rise, and your body has much more of a metabolically safe space, and it doesn't feel the need to send out a whole bunch of insulin. Because if we send our sugar up, what's the next? It's going to go right back down, and we're going to feel awful, and then maybe want more carbs.
And hungry.
Yes.
And hangry, which we don't need help in midlife feeling
Hangry.
So if you can review for our lady friends here, what exactly is happening, a few of the details of what's happening in midlife that causes these changes in the first place.
Yes. So the changing reproductive hormones, or our sex hormones, change the behavior of our metabolic and our digestive hormones. And when those hormones behave differently, that changes how the body perceives hunger and fullness, and also how the body manages to get the energy value out of the food. So you had mentioned, insulin resistance or elevated insulin. So we know that during perimenopause, we have a rise in overall blood sugar. Just we don't have as good of a fasting blood sugar as we did before. And why that's happening is because we're insulin resistant. And that just means when the insulin is secreted by the pancreas and enters the bloodstream and pairs with the glucose, in theory, it's supposed to go directly into the cell easily. But because of this resistance to the insulin, it bumps up against the cell and it can't get in. So the body, in effort to continue to lower the blood sugar, kicks out more insulin. And so that's why we have elevated levels of insulin. And remember, insulin's an anabolic hormone. It makes us heavy. So if our insulin levels are higher, we're going to gain weight. We're going to be more hungry. We're going to want to eat more carbohydrates.
And the other piece too, so physiologically there's all these changes happening.
Yep.
On top of a period of time where you might feel anxious and you're not sleeping.
Yes.
And since you're tired, you might not be able to do the things right.
Yes.
Meal prep, you're less motivated to do that. So I feel like it's like a big picture kind of thing.
It is.
One of the things that I love about Kim is that she is a life coach in addition to being a dietitian. I feel like she's a rock star at both. Put on your coaching hat for a minute. So what is a visit like when you are not talking about insulin and glucose and you are just talking to a woman about her relationship to her body and the scale?
Okay. So what I like to do, first of all, is help the woman understand the story that she is telling herself about her human form, right? The human form, say it's a 53-year-old female, the neutral circumstance or the facts of her story is just that she's a 53-year-old female. Like, that's it, right? Her story about herself as that person will determine how she feels. And how we act is always determined by how we feel. If we feel yucky or poorly or crappy, we're going to show up crappy in our life, and we aren't going to make choices to do things that better ourselves. And then we create the result that we don't want, which is maybe where they're currently living, right? So I try to get into, what are you telling yourself on a daily basis? What is some of the junky garbage thoughts? So we kind of start there, and I help her to understand that that story is literally leading her to create results for herself that she doesn't want. It's good old cognitive behavior therapy, right? So then, sometimes we look at how do we create a story about ourselves that will lead to a result? So if your result is, I want to feel like I'm in control of some of these body changes that are happening, right? I want to feel like the scale is not determining how I feel about myself. So we may come up with that story. Like, there are so many things I can do to right my own ship.
Yeah.
And it starts with the story I have of me. Feeling better about yourself right now, regardless of whether or not you want to lose 5 pounds. And I'm not saying that, you shouldn't try to lose 5 pounds if that's what you want to do, right? But feeling better about yourself right now is the way to get what you want. We never do right by ourselves from a place of shame and junk and guilt and self-deprecation.
Yeah, I think you have to deep dive a little bit.
Yes.
Because there's so many layers to it.
Yes.
Especially for women, especially for those of us in this generation, because we grew up, our moms were all on diets.
Yeah. And
the
putting
way
us on them.
And the way, the way we talk, like our bodies were talked about by family members. You know, there's so many layers.
There is.
We could talk about that for days. So jump into a topic before we wrap up. Again, controversial. What are your thoughts on some of the weight loss medications? And we're going to keep this one brief because we could have a whole podcast.
We are. We're going to do a whole podcast on it. And I will tell you that my thoughts have evolved as the data and the research has come out. And I do believe that there is a role for weight loss medication for women in menopause. I'm going to leave it at that. I am very thoughtful about coming up with my opinions, and I like to rely on the data. Like, what is the evidence telling us? Mm-hmm. And in our practice, we have begun to have the discussions with women. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. I think it plays a role, and I think that we will have a very honest discussion about how women can look at and explore the use of weight loss medications.
Yeah. Awesome. Everybody will be waiting to hear that.
Yeah. At the beginning, when they first came out, I was freaked out.
I was too.
Yeah.
And I was very, no for weight loss purposes, but yes for right diet.
Correct.
And then I think taking care of women who are coming in, who are doing all the right things and are like, this isn't going anywhere, this weight that came with me, and it is taking up so much room in my brain. Especially when they've gotten to the point where there's metabolic changes, insulin resistance, if they have inflammation. Yes. Yep. So again, see, rein me in.
I know, right? Well, we get passionate, right? When we find a tool that might be beneficial for our community, it's hard not to share it because I want everybody to be well and feel good in their bodies and protect their future, right? So
thank you, ladies, for joining us this week. I could pick Kim Lovely's brain for days about this stuff. So be well and join us next week.
So excited that you were here. Thanks for spending time with Vicki and I today on Faded to Fabulous, where midlife is just the beginning of your boldest chapter. Until next time, stay fabulous.